Ahoy everyone, Tightrope here. In this video we're taking a look at the balance changes for Brits and DAK that arrived in the 2.05 patch for COH3. Moving on to the British Forces nerfs, and we're starting out with the Forward Observer Artillery Barrage. It's had a munitions cost increase going from 35 to 45 and a cooldown increase going from 60 seconds up to 120 seconds. I think this is a very good idea because it was way too spammable for how good it was after the previous patch. Real chore to have to constantly dodge. So now, if you're going to be spamming it, you're going to be missing out on other upgrades or being able to plant mines, stuff like that. I think this change does actually increase the value of the decoy flares on the Dingo as well, because previously, the barrage itself didn't cost that much more than the decoys, so you might as well just chuck it out and it'll cool down in time for the next target anyway. But now, a third the price. There's definitely a lot more value from these decoy flares. The Crusader II, this is the vanilla variant, the one that does not have the 6-pound upgun. It's had its near penetration nerfed by 10. This was a little bit surprising to me because they only just nerfed it to 100 patch 1.9, I think, so it's getting nerfed yet again. Gonna make the Crusader, maybe less consistent, especially against things like the Whirlwind, which we see quite a lot of. Even if you drive point blank on the Whirlwind now, you're not guaranteed to get it through it on the front. So it's going to make this less consistent in anti-vehicle. The Bishop has had the amount of experience required to vet it up increased by about 15% at every level. So you'll be unlocking these variancy bonuses later on. It's just going to slow down the scaling of the Bishop, especially like coming fresh off light vehicle training. Now it's, quite a lot more to get Vet 1, start getting that recharge bonus happening. I will say that, the release of that new light vehicle training really supercharged the Bishop. It was like almost perfectly aimed at the Bishop, giving it rate of fire bonus and recharge. No other light vehicle benefited from this nearly as much. I think the Stuart was the second best, and the Poleston and the Humber don't really care about this too much. So, yeah, we kind of saw too much Bishop spam in the previous patch, and I don't think this change is going to address that. I still think we're going to see too much Bishops. I think this light vehicle training is the catalyst. It's just going to makes the Bishop too strong, I think. Gurkhas can now use the Forward Observer Artillery Barrage. The battle group is called Indian Artillery, so it does kind of feel in keeping with the theme. Moving on to the Air and Sea battle group now, looking at Commandos. They now have the hidden demo charge instead of the normal one. So it's gone up in cost from 50 to 75 munitions, but you need a sweeper to detect it. Normal units cannot see it anymore once they get close. So you have to sweep it. But I hate this, man. I hate this. I think, they buffed up demo charges back in patch 1.7, I think it was. It used to be to wipe a squad with the demo charge. They had to be like really clumped up on cover or something, but I don't know if you saw where I planted that demo, but this is like a squad. Peregrines, one of the healthiest squads that Axis have access to in terms of, health per model, very high, and some of these models like right on the edge of the demo. The whole squad's dead. It just wipes the whole squad in like a huge area. The healthiest squad Axis have basically just vanishes. I think these like hidden demo charges, it's just really stupid. So easy to wipe a squad with them. I hate this. I hate it. The Centaur has had its maximum speed increased by 0.55, which brings up to the same level as the Crusaders now. So I want to have a little bit of a race here. Squad retreating to over here versus the Centaur. Just see exactly how fast it is compared to infantry. Maybe we can assess its potential as a chase down type vehicle. So yeah, it is a little bit faster than infantry now, so it does give you a bit of flexibility to chase with it, which is kind of good. Like if you can sit right on top of a squad like this, you can actually splash some pretty good damage on a squad, but you have to be fast enough to achieve that. And the Centaur with this speed buff now is fast enough to chase down retreating squads. Moving on to the Canadian Shock battle group, and we're starting out with Attacking Spirit. This is the buff that your squads get when they decapture an enemy point that gives them healing for 45 seconds. And that healing works when they are in combat as well. Yeah, the amount of healing that's done has been decreased from 90 to 70 over the same 45-second duration. This ability has been, I think, like completely distorting 1v1 because on 1v1 you do a lot of capping, so you are constantly triggering this buff, and this buff has just been extremely strong to the point where I would guess that this ability alone has been boosting up Brit win rates in ones by like a crazy amount. Like I feel playing against this, I'm playing against an opponent that's like 250 elo above me just by them having this in the early game. Is that distorting of an ability? It's so strong in 1v1s. It is insane. And I don't think decreasing the amount of healing by 20 is going to do much to address this. Basically, you know, your sections have 95 health, so it's not going to full heal them if they are extremely low anymore. And, you know, if you're fighting in combat, the healing rate's a bit slower, so it's going to maybe make those fights not quite as lopsided as they once were. But yeah, I can't overstate how strong this ability has been in ones, and it's just been completely overwhelming. Such a chore to play against, because it just allows the Brit player to not have to worry about healing for so long. They can stay on the field for ages because they'll just constantly be triggering it as they're running around capping. And it's a nightmare to fight against this. You really just have to get suppression, because fighting infantry versus infantry when the Brit player has this buff, it's just impossible. And this hasn't done much to address this. By the same token, like, it's just hasn't been much of a factor in team games because, you know, not fighting over as much territory, you're not triggering it as often, and the offensive resupply can give you some pretty good value in team games as well. So it hasn't been as much of a factor, but yeah, it's been completely distorting ones, and I think it's still going to be overpowered in that mode. The Burnout ability has had its command point cost reduced by 1, and its munitions cost decreased by 10. I actually thought the Burnout was like pretty solid, especially in team game modes where maybe you've got like 2 whole armies fighting over 1 point, and so being able to use Burnout on that point can give you a big edge compared to 1v1s where maybe it's only like 1 unit on each side fighting over a point, so it just doesn't provide as much value. But yeah, in team games I thought this was decently strong, and the reason why it didn't really get used was because incendiary munitions is so overpowered. So yeah, they've decided to buff up Burnout. Relic didn't touch incendiary munitions in this patch, so now is a good time for me to talk about them, and I might as well combine it with pyrotechnics since these two go hand in hand. First, regarding the area of this, the visual area doesn't really line up too well with the debuff area. Like, sometimes it feels like you're not in the flames, but you're getting hit by them, so maybe Relic could slightly tweak this, slightly tune it down, because it feels extremely hard to dodge. You kind of feel like you've dodged out of the zone, but you're actually still getting hit by the debuffs and stuff. Maybe a slight tone down on the area of this would be appreciated, because it just doesn't match up with how it looks in game. Now discussing the damage itself from incendiary munitions. If you're getting hit by one of these grenades, you're basically always going to take the first tick of flame damage as well. So it's kind of adding 10 damage onto all of these grenades. And in the case of the Gammon Bomb, which is already such a strong grenade, an extra 10 damage on top of its normal performance, it's kind of taking it from like a high chance to wipe a squad to like guaranteed to wipe a squad. So it's, you know, and that's a big difference, being able to retreat a squad on low, reinforce it, versus having to rebuild it. It's like double the cost. And then it's, you know, ignoring veterancy and stuff as well. So I feel like incendiary munitions kind of pushed a lot of these grenades maybe a little bit too strong, especially considering you can spam them with offensive resupply for free. Just, yeah, maybe a little bit too potent. I was thinking maybe they could just add like a slight delay. I know it maybe doesn't sound that fun, but maybe the first tick of flame damage could start up like half a second later. Just give you, you know, a little bit more chance to dodge. I've also read quite a few complaints about the 2-inch mortar barrage on the Canadian shocks, so we're going to give it a test out here up against a machine gun. This is on the edge of vision range. First off, we're going to do it vanilla with no incendiary munitions, see how it goes.
We should be so lucky. We're up.
This is, I'd say, like pretty common range for you to be using it at. It seems to have quite a lot of scatter, but if it does land clean, it can get some pretty big hits. I'm going to turn on the incendiary munitions. Try it out again.
Not a problem, eh?
Looks quite a bit more potent with the flames. Because even if it doesn't land like clean on top of all the models, the flame damage is going to catch the ones towards the edge and start doing way more damage.
Come off it. Listen up.
I mean, it looks okay. It doesn't, I don't know. It doesn't look like crazy overpowered to me though. The point assault ability has been buffed. Now the buff it provides to infantry lasts for longer, and you have a longer window to get on top of the point to decapture it to trigger the buff again. So that's pretty important because high resource points take quite a long time to decapture, so the window to actually decapture them and re-trigger the buff was like quite short. So it just made this more user-friendly, which I think is a pretty good idea. Now it compares like pretty well compared to Designate Defensive Line. Both 50 munitions, 20% reduced damage, 20% rate of fire versus just 25% reduced damage. You can use it offensively. Covers like a decent chunk of area as well. Buff lasts for quite a long time. You can run around with it. I think this makes this ability actually quite good now, especially in team games where you might have like a whole army, maybe like 5 or so squads attacking a point. Getting the buff on a big army like that's going to be quite potent. Looking at the Churchill Crocodile now, it's had a manpower cost increase by 100. They also said they changed the flamethrower. Instead of being like a beam, it's now a circle. So I'm going to test that out here. Got a couple squads. See how it goes. Put it on hold fire.
You have orders? You need AT support?
Okay, going, driver.
Oh, hold fire stops it. Here we go. Ooh. That looked pretty good. Not so good against a squad out in the open though. It's really good against something that's clumped up with the new flamethrower. But a squad that's pretty spaced out doesn't seem to be that good. What about a team weapon? I think I might hit like 2 models at a time. Alright. Well, yeah, it looks to be like really good against a squad that's clumped up in heavy cover. The flamethrower absolutely torched them, ripped through them really fast, but against units that are more spread out, you're only going to be hitting like 1 or 2 models at a time, it looks like, so not mega potent in those situations. I do think the Crocodile is going to get better this patch anyway, since Jaegers had their smoke removed. You can't use attack ground with the flamethrower. Jaeger smoke was a pretty good counter to the Croc, and that's not going to be as prominent anymore, so I do think the Croc's going to get better this patch just by coincidence. But the Croc wasn't that popular as a heavy tank in the previous patch. Sure, you could still stall into it and arrive earlier than the others, but his matchup against the other heavy tanks is abysmally bad. His main gun can barely penetrate them. They kind of just farm vet off it. Moves around so slowly, they can't really avoid them. If if you go for the Croc and the enemy goes to the King Tiger, your game's in trouble. And I think part of the problem is compared to like the COH3 variant as well, you couldn't like come forwards, squirt a pool of flame on the ground, then back away. The Croc had to like sit there in front of the enemy, continually shooting at them, and that means it took like a lot of damage. So it wasn't that popular, it wasn't that strong, I think, in the previous patch. But maybe with these new flamethrower damage changes, might be a bit better. The 8-Rad has been massively buffed. First off, it has its cost reduced by 20 manpower. It's also had its near accuracy increased by about 50%, and its mid-range accuracy increased by about 25%. So huge increases to its accuracy. Going to make it way better against infantry. So we're going to try it out here. One at close range, well, mid-range, two at close range, just see how fast it kills a squad now. Its near range goes out to 10, so pretty much every model should be inside the near range here. And its mid-range is at 20, so maybe half the models inside that, half the models outside. Let's see how fast the 8-Rad can shoot through riflemen. I mean, it does make a bit of a difference. You know, this did die first. It does make it kill a little bit faster than at mid-range, but it didn't make as big of a difference as I was expecting. Maybe it'll make more of a difference when you're running and gunning. You know, when the 8-Rad has the moving accuracy penalty. The 8-Rad does actually have pretty low firing on the move penalties. So we'll see how it goes against a squad of riflemen. Chasing them down on retreat. Gotta get a little bit closer than this though. We want that near accuracy to be kicking in. Probably now it's coming in. Doesn't look super lethal to me. Kind of crazy how how that changes things. Stationary is like hitting basically every hit. Now it's firing on the move. Seems to be taking way longer to kill. Interesting. Upon reading the changes, I thought this was going to turn the 8-Rad into a bit of a wiping monster, but upon testing that doesn't really seem to be the case. The gun changes have been applied to the 8-Rad for Wehrmacht as well, but not the manpower discount. The Panzer III had its near penetration nerfed by 40, and this brings it into line the exact same amount of penetration as the Sherman has. Sherman got the same change in the previous patch. Developers just remembering to do it to the P3 this time round. It does kind of reinforce you if you want to use the Panzer III as your main battle tank. Probably going to need to go armored support for it, maybe get the penetration bonus from here as well as the tungsten. Otherwise it's going to be a bit lackluster, especially against all the heavy tanks that are running around. The Sherman did still see quite a lot of play in the previous patch, even after the change, but maybe less for anti-tank, more for anti-infantry because its machine guns are so strong. But the machine guns on the P3 are not as strong. Shermans do about 50% more damage than the ones on the P3, so yeah. In the Italian Combined Arms Battle Group, the Semovente has had the AoE damage of its high explosive barrage increased close to the center by about a third. So we're going to do a comparison test here to the 75mm M3, barraging at about 45 range, which is close to the Semovente's max. M3 is also firing that range, though it can fire way further. So let's let it rip. I think one of the benefits of the Semovente is it fires faster, right? So yeah, looking pretty potent there against a machine gun. Obviously you have to get closer. But, you know, you might be able to get 2 shells in before the enemy dodges, whereas pretty easy, I think, usually for the enemy to dodge after the 75mm M3 gets 1 shot on. Both end up getting the kill in the end. And this does have better AoE on it, like at all stages. So fires slower, fires longer, better damage. But Semovente maybe is going to get 2 hits on before the enemy dodges. So could improve your damage output that way. Upon looking back at the footage, I actually noticed that one of the Semoventes, the one at the back, actually managed to kill a model in the first shot of its barrage, which I don't think should be possible. I think it should only be able to do 54 damage in 1 hit. So let's try this out again. So 54 on one model. Yep, that one worked fine.
What's wrong? Barrage on my man!
Yep.
Barrage HE! Shoot impact! Hold up! What's wrong?
There we go. It did more this time round. What's that like? 64 damage? Strange. Bersagliere have had the amount of experience required to vet them up increased, so now it actually takes more XP than riflemen or Panzer, which maybe on the face of it doesn't seem that fair, but you know, they do have this quick march ability, which means you know they can just be involved in more fighting. Whenever they retreat and run back onto the field, they're going to get there faster thanks to this. Just in general, like rotating from fight to fight, they're going to get there faster, so they're going to be involved in more fights. Maybe that was causing them to vet up a bit fast compared to the others. The Strafing Run has been buffed. It does 10 more damage per plane, so 20 more damage if both passes hit the enemy. Costs 10 munitions less, and it can now suppress infantry. So I'm going to try it out here against these riflemen. Damage, 30 damage. I think it pinned immediately after the first pass as well, so this might be one of the best abilities to go for a crush afterwards as well. You can't go for the Karamato. I'm not sure. Can this crush after units pinned? I'm not entirely sure, but it's locked out anyway. See how that choice, but yeah, pinned straight away. I thought it might take, like, might suppress first pass, pin on the second, but no, pin straight away. Makes this pretty powerful now, actually. You guys know I had to put on the Guastatori sweater when talking about these guys. So they've had their submachine guns improved, the accuracy on them about 10% at close range. I think it's about 20% mid-range. If we compare the Guastatori to Commandos, you can see the Guastatori still do way less damage, though of course they've got their damage reduction, which makes them more durable, so that kind of offsets the difference. But it does show that Guastatori did have some room to have their submachine guns improved without, becoming too overpowered compared to the competition. One of the Vet 3 bonuses on Guastatori has also been changed. They used to get plus 25% to accuracy, but now they get plus 50% to burst length instead. What this means is that the submachine guns will fire for longer every burst of fire they do, and the flamethrowers will burst for longer as well. Previously, getting plus 25% to accuracy would help the submachine guns, but wouldn't help out the flamethrowers at all. So yeah, just this veterancy kind of more suited to the weapon equipment that Guastatori carry. Also in the Italian infantry battle group, the territory booby traps have been buffed. They've come down in cost by 10 munitions, going from 45 to 35, which actually brings them really close to a Shumite, slightly more than a Shumite. And this makes them quite appealing because they do more damage to infantry, slow the enemy capture. So putting one on a point is actually pretty good. We'll see what it does to the squad here. Run in here. Let's see how much damage that did to a squad. And this might be the tipping point into making these relevant again. They're up against some stiff competition, prepared positions, but yeah, I mean, look how much damage that did to a squad, and it slowed its capture down for 20 seconds. Maybe these are back on the menu now. One thing I want to say about them is, it's quite annoying on Panzer Pios. Why are they on E hotkey? Where on Guastatori they're on A, but once you upgrade the flamethrower, they move from E to A. Really need to switch the position of this on Panzer Pios. Really annoying when hotkeys are different like this. Sound the alarm has had its duration increased from 30 up to 45 seconds now. That's a pretty big bonus. I always dream as a 1v1 player of getting sound the alarm on an 88, turbo buffing up its rate of fire, and just absolutely owning the enemy. But it's pretty hard to set up since the sound the alarm bonuses only apply to the sector that they're in, and the sectors in 1s are quite small. But I can imagine in 4s, where the sectors are way larger, you may fit most of your army inside the sector, getting 50% faster rate of fire. That's really good for only 40 munitions. So watch out for sound the alarm in the big team modes. Propaganda War is now 2 command points cheaper to unlock, and to use it, it's also 20 munitions cheaper. I think compared to the new propaganda leaflet drop in the Terror Doctrine, this ability kind of looked like garbage, so they've buffed it up.
Leaflet bombs
Make
incoming,
it
Commandant.
see a bit more use. Alright, moving on to the Armored Support Battle Group, starting out with Vehicle Awareness, is now 1 command point cheaper to unlock. It only lasts for 40 seconds now, but it goes up to 90 range instead of 60, so way further detection. And it's like permanent detection as well. There's no pulses anymore. So it can give you some really good intel for a pretty long time. Remember, this doesn't cost any munitions to use anymore. So, I mean, it seems kind of pretty good again. Especially if you're running around with something like an 8-rad, trying to avoid the enemy's chaffee or something like that. Pretty strong ability. The Stuka anti-tank loiter has come down in cost by 20 munitions. They did nerf it really hard in the previous patch, such that a lot of people weren't reselecting it anymore. So this is kind of nudging it back into viability again. A couple changes to battlefield espionage, starting out with the sector subterfuge beacon. This is the one that steals resources from the enemy. Now it's only 50 manpower instead of 75, so it's a bit more affordable. Firestorm has come down in munitions cost. This is like a bit underwhelming in terms of DPS, but pretty good area denial tool, so it's a bit cheaper now. And finally, Operation Scorpion. That's the one down here that makes your tanks camouflaged. That no longer slows your tanks while camouflaged, even though it still says but move 0% slower. Maybe they need to update the description there. And it's also supposed to be 25 munitions cheaper, but they don't seem to have made that change yet. Moving over to the Panzer Command Battle Group, starting out with blockade equipment. Roadblocks are now 2 seconds faster to construct, and they have 140 more health. Remember, you cannot crush these with things like the bulldozer with its blade down or heavy tanks. So they're going to be a pretty big obstruction in the late game. Maybe for you, nice way to keep your elephant safe out the back. Very hard to get to. S-mines can now only damage 2 models at a time, like most other minefields, instead of the whole squad. So it's going to make them far less lethal. So we're going to run this squad of riflemen through this minefield. They're here, but you can't really see them too well. Go. So yeah, that's far less potent. S-mines was one of the main draws to using this battle group because they were extremely powerful. But now, with roadblocks getting buffed, these getting nerfed, there's a bit more competition between the two. The butterfly bomb paradrop has been nerfed against infantry. Now each bomb can only damage 1 model from a squad instead of 2. So it's probably going to cut down the amount of damage it does overall. But in return, each bomb can do a little bit more damage against infantry. So we'll see how this goes here. Got a whole string of them set up along here. Normal kind of paradrop. This direction. Squad's going to retreat over it. Let's see what the result is. I mean, if you string them up correctly, still pretty close to a squad wipe. Most times, you know, when you're trying to get this on somebody's retreat path, you're only looking to polish off a squad that's only like 2 or 3 models. So I think it'll still be able to wipe squads if you get it in the retreat paths, but it definitely does look less potent than it was before. One of the annoying things about trying to sweep butterfly bombs is that quite often your engineers would shoot at the mine you're trying to sweep and then would slow everything down, you take damage. And Relic haven't done anything to address this. Like, I know they want you to be able to kill the mines while they are like landing and before they arm, but this is just so annoying when you have to try to sweep them up. Quite often I don't feel safe trying to actually use my engineers on sweeping mode because I'm worried I'm just going to trigger them all, so I just try and attack them, but then attacking them takes quite a long time because they have 25 health, so they take a few shots to go down. So I was maybe expecting Relic to do something about that. Maybe they would stop units from auto-attacking them, like you could right-click to attack them, or maybe like attack move would cause you to attack them, but you wouldn't auto-attack them, something like that. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's definitely frustrating when you try to sweep a mine and you explode it on yourself because you can't stop your engineers from doing anything. The Elefant was the most underwhelming of the 4 heavy tanks released in the DLC. There just wasn't that much of a reason to go for it over the Tiger. Like, sure, I can shoot a little bit further, but in exchange you lost so much mobility and so much anti-infantry. The players were just going for Tigers non-stop instead, even if they were going for this battle group. So Relic have done something about that, decided to buff it. First off, they've increased the amount of damage it does from 240 up to 280, so now it does more damage per shot than the Tiger. And this is actually a reasonably important breakpoint because it means it can 3-hit premium medium tanks like the Easy 8 and the Grunt. So, you know, 3 shots instead of 4 makes a big difference. On top of that, its reload has been improved, so it's shooting almost 1 second per shot faster. That's a pretty big difference. Its penetration has been increased. Now it has 1,000 penetration at all ranges, so it's guaranteed to penetrate anything, including the Black Prince, whereas previously it could bounce occasionally. But they have fixed its variant, so it used to have medium tank vet, kind of like the Pershing. Now it has proper heavy tank vet. So in this battle group, they've kind of moved a bit of the power away from some of the previous strong options and put it back onto the Elefant. Kind of balances things out. Still keeps this as an appealing battle group. Now that the Elefant has been buffed and is probably worth getting, I wonder if Relic will consider putting a limit so you can't get the Tiger and the Elefant on the field at the same time. Because I have played against this combo once in 1v1s, and boy did I feel powerless. It was not fun to play against. So yeah, they did have a limit like that in COH2. I wonder if they're going to do that in COH3. Just regarding the defensive positions unlock in this battle group, I feel like I've noticed sometimes the enemy has both this buff and the combined arms buff at the same time. I'm not sure exactly how to trigger it. You may also notice that they've got this buff right now, the defensive positions buff, even though they are out in the open. You see the edge of the combined arms range here. If the Crowd drives out of range, they lose it. They drive in range, they go to combined arms instead. So it seems like this increases the combined arms range buff by like 5 or something as well. So there's something funky going on with this, I think. Taking a look at the bug fixes, and there's not really much here to talk about it. This is a very short list of bug fixes, especially for a patch that took 3 months to come out compared to all the other patches. This is a really small number, which does kind of make me worry that Relic have scaled back even further the amount of developers working on the game, because, you know, just since the last patch, I alone have submitted 2 bug fixes and neither of them have been addressed, so I'm sure there are like hundreds more out there. So the fact that they've only got, you know, what, 6 or so here is a bit of a worry. My final thoughts on the 2.05 patch: it's pretty disappointing if I'm honest. A rather small list of changes that I don't think are going to shake up the meta too much, considering it was 3 months since the last patch and probably another 3 months till the next patch. Doesn't give you much to chew on while you wait. So if you're already bored of the 2.0 meta, there's not much to return to the game for in this patch, which is unfortunate. A lot of players returned to the game and new players picked up the game for the Fire and Steel DLC, and this patch doesn't really feel like a good way to keep that momentum going. All I can say is that I hope that the fall update, which is supposed to be a major one, is a real banger, because this patch is a bit of a whimper. Thank you to all of my Patreon backers, and if you're enjoying my content, I hope you consider coming on board.